everyone. My name is Ricky Grove, and I'm here with my friends Tracy Harwood, Damien Valentine, and Phil Rice for the And Now for Something Completely Machinima May 2023 series of podcasts. Yay! We
June.
have Tracy Harwood. What's that?
We're in June.
Oh, we are in June. That's right. Thank you. I'm already starting out with a mistake. And Tracy, thank God you're back to correct those stupid mistakes.
Yes.
We missed you. We missed you very much.
Oh, I missed you all so much.
Yes, yes. In fact, that's going to be the subject of our first episode. It's going to be Tracy's trip to the Oberhausen International Short Film Festival that was founded in 1954. She was invited to it. The interesting thing is that this is the first year that they've included specific programming for machinima, which is probably one of the main reasons why Tracy went. Welcome back, and let's start talking about what your experience was like. How did they invite you? What was the process and all of that?
Sure. The event itself, the themed component of it, the machinima themed component of it, was the major part of the program, and the coordinators of that theme, two young men called Vladimir Nadine and Dmitry Frolov, contacted me out of the blue on email and asked me to be part of the panel discussion to talk about the whole theme of machinima. The theme was called Against Gravity, which was it was a really intriguing way that they put this program together. So I was really glad to be a part of it and really interested to hear what they'd got to say and the way that they'd developed it.
Where did it take place?
Where did it? When or where? Where?
Yeah, what city? What country and what city?
Oberhausen in Germany, which was about 20 minutes on a nice fast little train from Dusseldorf Airport. Flew out of London City Airport, which was a nice treat, nice small airport, and about an hour later landed in Dusseldorf, and 20 minutes after that I was in Oberhausen, which was a really interesting industrial town, actually.
How long did the festival run?
It ran from the 31st of May to 28th of May to the 1st of No, I've got that wrong. 28th of April to the 1st of May. It's my turn to get the months mixed up.
I'm infecting you.
It was about a month ago. It was a while back. It was a good 4 or 5 days. Unfortunately, I could only make it for a couple of days. So I flew in on the Friday night and flew out on the Monday morning.
Right.
Which was a bit of a shame because I hadn't actually seen the full detail of the program before I had to book my flight, which meant that the way that they programmed it was over all of these days, and just sections of it were running on each day. So I only really got to see four segments that they put together, and they put together a really interesting selection of films across all of these days. And what they've done is loosely programmed it to sort of represent a video game or machinima creative experience. So they've kind of gone from starting the game, holding the controller, crack the code, don't forget to save, opening the map, unlock the reel, cosplay as, and then this retrospective of Phil Solomon as well. Phil Solomon's work was actually the inspiration for them putting the program together. And as I understand it, it's again really interesting. As I understand it, what they really wanted to do was connect analog forms of filmmaking to digital forms of filmmaking. And obviously what we're talking about here is avant-garde film in particular. So not just sort of YouTube community-made machinima, fan-based machinima and what have you, but sort of a whole approach to avant-garde filmmaking. So they programmed it around connecting analog to digital, which basically meant that within each segment, what they did was used older works and newer works to sort of, used machinima to sort of position older machinima to position what they were doing, and then showcase some more contemporary work. So it was a kind of sort of a history of, as well as the way that they programmed it kind of connected these two worlds together. And Phil Solomon, of course, was this pioneering avant-garde US-based filmmaker who passed away in 2019. So they wanted to particularly use his work as the kind of the key driving force behind the program that they put together. I am actually hoping to interview both Vladimir and Dmitry as a follow-up thing for our show here, because I really want to ask them how they thought it went. I think when you're in the midst of putting something together, as we all know, when you're in the midst of putting something together, you kind of get lost in the detail and you don't really sit back and take it in. But I really want to hear what they've got to say about how they thought it went, how they thought the audiences received it, because quite a lot of the stuff that I was at was sold out. And it was it was an interesting experience from that point of view too.
So you had the panel discussion,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had different segments for different films.
Yes, loosely based around those themes. So, within, say, starting the game, they had a selection of work. In actual fact, they had a live performance, which I unfortunately didn't see as part of that segment. But the ones that I particularly got drawn into were opening the map and unlocking the reel. And within each of those themes, they then sort of went into that theme in numerous kind of different ways to select the works that they had. Didn't always make a lot of sense to me, I have to be honest, but the films were very interesting. Most of the films I hadn't seen, some of them I had, but most I would say I had not seen, and that kind of led me down a really interesting thought process of why have I not seen these films? Well,
yeah, because I mean, since we have the podcast here, you're screening literally dozens of films each week.
Absolutely, and I'm continually watching content. I mean, mostly 5 minutes here and there with a cup of coffee whilst I'm in between doing other things is generally speaking when I watch most of the machinima that I do these days. But what I concluded from it was that actually a lot of the creators that they had settled on, the avant-garde creators, are not YouTube creators. They don't do it in the same way. They don't make content for the same audience that machinima has been generally created for. Who
do they make it for?
Well, they're artists. These guys. These guys use machinima as found tools, exactly, as found tools. Many of them didn't really even recognize the term machinima or even want to be associated with the term machinima. But they use it as
what do they call it?
The art creative practice using 3D engines or animation. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Some of that side of it, I was really very, very intrigued with. But the distribution strategy they have is not the same that we often see and have focused on. They will enter it into film festivals, say, as some of this had been open call as well as selected, I believe. Some of them will be making work for galleries and have that as part of their distribution strategy, but very rarely. I mean, when I was looking at the films that I saw in the program to see if I could find them for the blog post that I wrote, I couldn't even find them on YouTube or Vimeo. They're just not there. Which is a pity, really, because I certainly think that a wider audience is something that's needed for this type of machinima too. I mean, you've often said, Ricky, haven't you? I wish we could see more avant-garde machinima. Well, you're not going to if they keep making it exclusively for gallery-based work. Tell you one thing that I did think was interesting, though. Some of the game-based machinima that had been created using a game engine was being collected by galleries. And the kind of question that I had was how does that work with the copyright issues that we've all talked about.
Yeah.
I don't know that, large sums of money are exchanged here.
Because there would be the whole public performance thing of something that's, a copyrighted, like you can make something yourself with a game you own is different from a public place like a gallery screening something made with it. It's the whole, that's a completely separate rights issue. So that's a very good question.
Well, it's a very good question, but also the collecting issue is one what I was kind of thinking of. Because you can get away with showing things on public screens relatively easily.
Yeah.
So interestingly, music, it's not so easy. Like
music is a different thing, yeah.
Yeah, if there's commercial music and it's played in a public space, even in like a retail store, there's a separate license in place for that.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, I wonder. You would think that. I guess maybe video games. It's not something that they've had occasion to clamp down on.
Not yet.
Not yet, yeah.
But like I said, the whole kind of distribution strategy completely different.
Yeah.
And
did you see some really interesting films?
I've written on the blog post about some of the films that I did see. Some of them were actually more about the use of machinima than the machinima itself. I think Solomon's work actually was really quite interesting. What they did there, fascinating way they did this. They showed two films on, I think they were on 16mm film. So you hear the click clack of the projector going in the background for these two films. And these films had been they'd had like an emulsion applied to them, so they were corrupted films. Really, I'd never seen this done before. It was really interesting to sort of try and make out what it was that was being shown there. But then that was sort of juxtaposed against three GTA films in which Solomon was, he'd made these films in memory of a friend that he had lost, and was basically exploring the glitch in the game. And to my mind, what he appeared to be doing was looking for his friend that he played this game with in the glitches. And there were all sorts of other interpretations of what these films were about, which was quite interesting. But that sort of use of the game and the way that the assets were explored or not explored, and the narrative sort of pulled through the game was a really kind of interesting approach to the development of the work there. I think what intrigued me about that also was one of the artists that was there showcasing some of his own work, not actually machinima work, although I believe he does do machinima. He commented that he never understood why Solomon moved to machinima at all in this move between analog and digital. But the fact that the digital is about, or the development of 3D virtual environments are now being used for sort of story making worlds and storytelling, creating stories, making stories, creating stories in really interesting ways was something that this guy saw as being genuinely pioneering on the part of Phil Solomon, who was one of the first he saw doing this. So it kind of made him sit up and think about what digital practice really is and what these new digital tools are for filmmaking. And that I think is quite interesting, because although I believe Sam Crane's version of was it Hamlet that he did a few months back that we touched on the podcast, Sam had basically commented that this was important for a whole range of reasons, but he kind of missed the point of of this move between analog and digital, and what digital actually means in this context. You know, the move from 2D to 3D, which I think was that was, to me, was the key point being made here. The fact that, you know, what, because again, one of the questions that was asked at the panel was, you know, this idea of 3D is something that keeps being revisited, and primarily that audience were film people. They weren't game or machinima people at all. So they were asking that from the point of view of film. And again, so the more I was sort of thinking about that, I was thinking actually 3D means entirely different things in film and our game worlds. And it's realized in different ways. And I'm just going to ask you guys, do you ever remember seeing a 3D film machinima? I don't ever remember seeing a machinima that had been created as a stereoscopic film, which is what they meant by it.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm sure that someone's experimented with it, though, simply because at its peak, MovieStorm had quite a user base, and MovieStorm actually had a rendering option directly from the program to render in stereoscopic mode. So someone out there has experimented with it, but I've not actually seen the outcome of that.
I experimented with it, and it's just not worth the effort. And I believe iClone has the rendering.
iClone has it too. That's right, Damien. Yeah, it sure does.
But I don't think I've seen anything made with a game. I imagine that would take extensive modding to be able to do the 3D effects.
Yeah, that would be challenging.
Yeah, that would.
So yeah, well, that was another particularly interesting discussion, which I'm not sure they really understood the key differences here between what we talk about in 3D virtual environments and what they understand 3D to mean, which kind of led me to the conclusion that maybe there isn't a language to describe machinima easily to a film only audience. If one of the things is going to be, you know, more machinima being made accessible to a film audience, which it sounds like it is going to be.
Now, you mentioned that there was a panel discussion. I remember reading in your blog there was a rich difference of opinion and debate in the panel. What were some of the issues that you guys were debating, and who was on the panel?
Sure. Gemma Fantacci was on the panel. She's the part of the Milan Machinima Film Festival team. And now Ip Yayuk, I think is how you pronounce his name, or Yuk Yai. Forgive me, I haven't got the name correct. And also Alice Bucknell, with both Dimitri and Vladimir. So we were a panel of six with 6 very different perspectives on it. Alice is an artist, basically, using Unreal Engine as a tool set in which she develops her creative practice. So she's got a very specific way of working using Unreal Engine as a tool. She's in the process also apparently of making a game. She's very interested in using AI tools as well. So she'd used GPT-3 in order to create a virtual language to complement one of the films that was shown, which was absolutely fascinating, but primarily used as a 3-channel art installation, not a single channel film. So that consumption experience, I think, was quite interesting. I have to say, a little long. I can't imagine sitting in a gallery and watching an installation for 20 minutes or half an hour or an hour. I wouldn't do that. Most people wouldn't, I don't think. They kind of sample things and move on, which kind of does raise yet more interesting questions about how people are telling stories with machinima for gallery experiences. What are they expecting of the gallery experience? I don't know. Anyway, so Alice's work as an artist was one thing. Ip's work as a filmmaker I didn't actually see, but he's using You know, he was very clear that he was a passionate gamer, and that Machinima was a found tool, but he was a filmmaker primarily. So he kind of saw these things as very different, I think, although described himself as an avid game player, on which he'd spent many hours. And then obviously Gemma's interest is the avant-garde Machinima.
Right.
She's very much interested in counterculture, and Machinima fits quite clearly into that for her. And me, I suppose, coming at it from the perspective of the older perspective, the more of the origins of it, more of what we do now on the show, more about community. I've always been very passionate about the fact that Machinima is all about community, and
Right.
the fact that we're, you know, reviewing now films that are made almost without consideration of community is something that I think still rankles a little bit with me, except for the fact that, you know, the YouTube community is there mostly, and much of the content is consumed through that channel, which is why I think the avant-garde sits in a slightly different way for me.
Did that come up in the debate that you had?
Yes, I did bring that one up. Yes. I mean, the other thing that I think I brought up, I think, was the fact that much of Machinima is not made for the big screen. You know, you're sitting there watching a film on a theatre screen, and the detail that you see on Machinima films is just not what you would look at when you are making the film on computer screens, or even consuming it on YouTube. That's just not what you see. And even more so if you go to, you know, the mobile device or the iPad screen. Most Machinima isn't made for that kind of consumption experience, which I think raises some yet more interesting questions. And what was interesting through that discussion was it's clear that not a single one of the directors that I saw had even considered that as part of the way that they go about creating the film. Which are, again, very interesting.
Yes, indeed. So what were some of the topics that came up that we would be interested in hearing and discussing?
The topic, well, I mean, I think it was an hour and a half long panel. The topics were primarily, you know, what are the origins of Machinima? What's the future of Machinima? What's the practice that each of these panelists have in terms of their use of Machinima? And then opened up for questions from the audience, really.
What were the questions like from the audience?
Well, the one about 3D was particularly interesting. There was another one about poetry, the role of Machinima as poetry. And I confess that was directly tapping into the avant-garde world, which I'm not really massively au fait with. So that was one I couldn't really make much of, except for the fact, you know, literally poetry we have seen being made, you know, we've seen Machinima used to accompany poems being retold.
Sure.
You know,
I mean, who was that wonderful director who was the specialist in medieval culture and mythology?
Yes.
In Second Life, she did a whole series of medieval poems. Oh, how could I forget her name?
Yes.
Is it Hypatia?
Yes.
Hypatia Pickens?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now there's
hers was the name I couldn't recall on the day either.
Oh boy.
I know, I was very disappointed. I did sort of say, well, you know, Hughes Ozymandias was, you know, something that was put together very early on. I mean, it's not something that we've seen, but I got the distinct impression that wasn't really what the question was about. It was more about the poetry of the game.
Yeah.
So there was interest in the role of the game, as a, you know, as a form of avant-garde.
Right.
But you know, the talking about the the way Machinima is made and the way it was originally consumed within game environments, sharing dem files and all that sort of thing. It was straight over their head. They didn't really.
Yeah, I didn't get any of that at all.
But in terms of the future of Machinima, and some of the things that we've talked about in the past, such as the role of different technologies and the way people are using things like Unreal Engine to create games and then use them for their own, to create their own story worlds and what have you. All of those are things that people fully understand. I think it's just a case of who has the skills to do that. And
so now, what did you come away with after the festival? I remembered in your essay you talked about how you were surprised at such a different perspective on Machinima that so many of the people you met had.
I think I felt that that community of Machinima people had kind of missed the point of it a little bit, which was all about sharing and learning from each other and engaging in discussion to push each other. That to me has been the essence of Machinima and what originally attracted me to Machinima in the first place. Not only have you got all these amazing creative people, but the fact that they are then willing to engage in a discussion about this and that and learn and improve and so on, and all of that side of it to me is missing in that avant-garde world. Because it's all about the artist.
It seems to be focused on museum and curation and academics
and the artist. It's the artist doing it for them. They don't care about the audience or the community or the other people working with these tools. It's not really about, they're not really pushing each other in that sort of way. They're pushing themselves in their creative practice. It's all about them.
Well, I remember we've had some interesting films from the Milan Machinima Festival that we've picked and I've picked. And I always thought that those particular films that we had were from people who understood the game because they had played it.
Yes.
And so part of their film, as abstract as it was commenting on the game itself in a way. Phil had a choice once, I remember, some extraordinary moment in where a guy was going across this field and there was a dog. I can't remember where it was, but it was just so moving to me for some reason. But it seems like that connection isn't the case. They're just using it like pigment, like an oil painter uses paint. And they don't really have a connection to the game itself.
Yeah, I called it a matrix because I wrote a manifesto for Machinima several years ago now. And one of the things that I referred to was the fact that the game was the creative matrix, just like a board and the oils and the brush and whatnot would be part of the matrix of the creating of a painting.
Yeah.
And but it still misses that key bit for me.
That's right. Because if you look at say, just for an example, the Half-Life 2 Machinimas, you have an already built-in viewership of people who know the backstory.
Absolutely.
And who are informed by the backstory, which is why a music video like Still Seeing Green has such a profound and funny impact on audiences. If you show that video to so-called artists, they might find something to admire in it, but they would no way catch any of the other meanings behind the video.
Exactly. But
because they hadn't experienced the story of the game.
Indeed. And but it is, a lot of the Machinima that we review now is devoid of fully understanding the environment in which it is made. So it is a standalone story. I mean, I remember a few weeks ago we talked about Astartes made in Warhammer 40K.
Right.
And we got we got a little bit of flack for not fully understanding the Warhammer 40K world, but that's not really what
we didn't even understand the basic moral structure of
exactly
the characters there.
Exactly. But some of this doesn't have to be tied to the game world specifically, except for the fact that the game world adds to whatever it is you're doing.
Yes, it does.
And
it's part of the appeal of doing Machinima.
The more you know about it, it's just like a super fan of Star Wars watching the Star Wars again. They're going to know detail that somebody else just watching it wouldn't have. It's it's the levels and the layers of depth of understanding that I think's very interesting. But like I said, I think the real point of the program was this connection and a very timely connection between analog and digital, and the fact that it's included in an environment like this where they fully recognize that digital is the future of film with all those nuances. I think will open the floodgate for more machinima created work to be included in film festivals if they have the guts.
It's very important, the fact that this long, 1954, they've established a tradition of bringing information on film. The fact that they included it is a way of saying, now this is something to take a look at.
Absolutely.
This could be a tool, whether it's part of a community-based machinima approach or individual artists, however they do it.
Yeah.
Are they going to bring back more programming machinima next year?
Well, there was certainly some whispers of it when I was there. So I'm certainly going to be keeping my ears to the ground, see what comes of it. I would love to see them picking up the baton and running with it in this way.
That's great.
I think there's definitely lots of scope for it, and certainly new kinds of concepts that we're seeing coming. Is this a new kind of concept? It's not really, but the fact that you've got Disney and brands like Marvel rolling out story tropes across theme park film and virtual environment and chatbots and so on and so forth. This surely has to be something that's going to start stimulating new approaches to distributing content, I think. And if it's not included in these festivals, what are these festivals about?
Right.
Just
thank you,
stuff.
Tracy. Thank you very much for sharing your experience there. Do you have any final questions you want to ask her?
Not a question, but just a quick comment. As somebody who kind of, loosely pays attention to film festivals and occasionally looks and sees, hey, would this, accept the kind of content that we make? One thing that I liked about the idea of this festival was the loose theme, the somewhat ambiguous theme of, what did you say it was, Tracy? Like against gravity or something along those lines?
Yeah, against gravity. Yeah.
And I so many film festivals that I've looked at, particularly short film festivals, which I might be exploring for, hey, do they accept machinima content or not? And the theme will be like so narrow that it's so exclusionary that
restricting.
Yeah. So it's, women in the workforce in Wyoming. Okay, if I happen to make a film about that this year, I guess I can enter it. But if not, it doesn't even matter if they make, if they accept machinima. It's like, what?
Yeah,
so many of them are very narrow like that, that it may be a particular, not just broad like social justice, but a particular aspect of social justice, of this particular thing of, police malfeasance in Southern Ohio. It's like, man, come on. So I love the idea I would love the idea of stumbling upon a short film festival that had a broad category like that, that's open to use in metaphor and different interpretations. And then even with that loose theme, Tracy, you mentioned, I think earlier, that it was hard to kind of exactly see how something that they selected actually fit with the theme. Well, I think that's okay.
Yeah.
The theme, having a looser theme isn't just good for the filmmakers, it's also good for the people running the exposition, that it gives them more license to go, hey, let's just snag this, we want to include this, we want to show this anyway. So I hope more film festivals will go in that direction. I'm sure they've got good reasons for why they do the specific thing, but I just don't think they're good reasons. So
I think it's a shame that not more festivals have included Machinima in their program. I've never really fully understood why they haven't. We have seen over the last 20 odd years, 30 years nearly, some of the most amazing content being created that, has had millions and millions of views once it's hit more popular platforms. Why on earth would you not include things like that in programs that showcase, trends in the development of work?
Because a lot of the people that make choices about those sorts of things are people who don't spend the same amount of time that we do. They just look at what news and what's most popular. And what was most popular in Machinima? Red versus blue. And if you look at Red versus Blue, it's all about fart jokes and shit like that. Not at the beginning, but that's what it became. So that became the representative of what Machinima was. And I think many studios and people saw that as low class. And
some of it too, let's be frank, the game companies themselves have not exactly been at all helpful in that regard. They've kind of irradiated Machinima made with their game with this sense of, ooh, we better not touch that. If they have any lawyers employed for their festival at all, they're going to go, no, we can't. And that stinks, and I don't know how to fix that. It's been a problem for 20 years more. So, but that's part of it too, I'm sure, is that it's just, it's legal hot potato if it's made with the game, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
Not just for the filmmakers, but for those festivals too. It's probably going to take someone involved with festivals like that reaching out to those companies and saying, look, what can we do here? Because we'd like to show this. It's win-win as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they
were fascinated by the fact that I think Unity and Unreal have become such an important tools because they take that element that you're talking about away.
They do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, those platforms have no issue with that whatsoever.
But you know what? They were also really interested that when we did the 2007 festival, I put on the judges panels members of Microsoft and Rockstar Games, simply to try and sidestep some of these kinds of issues.
Sure.
And that was a strong strategy. But here, what we've got are artists making money out of the work that they're creating and distributing. This is not the case with most Machinima.
No,
they're not making money out of it, and yet it's still making it into this platform. And as I said, being sold, being shared in gallery spaces, which largely doesn't have the same issues, of course, as YouTube or whatever. It's managing to get around some of the issues that this community has faced.
Good for them.
Years and years.
Good for them.
Yeah, quite.
Well, all right. Why don't we wrap this up? Thank you very much, Tracy, for sharing your experiences. And for the rest of you guys for your interesting comments and discussions. Tracy, I'm sure we'll have a smaller write-up, but I refer you to her great blog post on the festival experience at our main website, completelymachinima.com. We also welcome your comments. Perhaps you're an artist who works in Machinima and are deeply offended by our comments on this show. We'd love to hear your excoriations and your comments and your screed. So send that to talk at completelymachinima.com, because we welcome it. Those
I thought you were going to give them my
mildly-
email address.
Yeah, get it directly to you. No,
Phil's
we'll
personal
send it to
email.
folks. And thank you guys, and welcome back, Tracy. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Next week we'll start on our regular cycle of films. Damien has picked some really good ones, and that'll start it out. Well, thanks a lot, folks. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.